For everybody who knows me, knows that I really have no interest in Facebook anymore. And I use it because I have to. But we are streaming on Facebook, but we are also streaming on our YouTube channel. And this is the Human Solutions YouTube channel. And I'm about to share this thing if I can figure out how to do that. I think I can do it here. There we go. And I know Lisa's still posting the Facebook live stream, and I welcome everybody to join that, but I don't have any way to input to it. So
okay, hang on just 1 second. He says that it's like, does that just go to voicemail if there's no screener?
Yeah, I mean there's a place for him to sit on hold. 646-929-2495, and I can screen the call. Yeah, so it's difficult. We have this show, and we teach people how to come and do things, and we normally have a screener that's with us, but sometimes things get off kilter a little bit. Back to court. I'm kind of rambling a little bit because this thing didn't start off the way it was supposed to. When you go to court and you answer charges, they present charges to you, and it could be in the form of an indictment in the case of a federal case, especially. Jonathan, I see that you're on there, so if you're listening, just hang tight. I got to finish my little opening spiel, and then we're going to bring you up. I don't have a screener today, so I will be the screener, so just hang tight. And it looks like that is you. So anyways, you stand up there and they ask you, how do you plead? And you're going to likely say not guilty because you probably feel that, you have a case that's worth fighting. And you will find, if you're charged with a crime and your case goes forward, not only does the court treat you like you're guilty, hell, you might be in custody at the time that you're fighting your case. There's Mary. Excellent. We have a screener in play, and everything is well with the world. We're back in play. So imagine this, okay? So you get picked up on a whatever, say a possession charge or whatever. You got raided. They think they have a case against you. They get a warrant. You get taken into custody. All right. So now you're locked up. Do you think that you are presumed innocent while you're being locked up? I don't know. Maybe you do. Then you get drugged from your cell, driven in a bus to court, and you're in jailhouse garb, either a jumpsuit or blues or oranges, generally speaking. Or it could be whatever color. Every jail's got their own colors. And you're in shackles, sometimes leg irons, and you go and you answer your charges and you say not guilty, and they drag you back into a holding cell. They probably take your shackles off once they put you back in the cage, and then they take you back to your housing, your general custody or whatever type of housing that you're in. You think you feel presumed innocent at that point? No. Our guest is having a very difficult time trying to log in. So give me a second, because why would we have this planned out? I'm just gonna send him the number again. 9292495. All right. And if this doesn't work, I guess I will try to place the call. Mary, I know you're listening. If we can't get this guy to call in, can you try calling him or get a hold of Becca? Becca said she knows how to do it. And the number is, I'll type the number on your little screen. Sorry about all this, folks. We're having a lovely show today. All right. Hold on. 4, 6, 9, 4, 5.
You're saying it out loud.
1, 8. I don't care.
All right.
Well, non-compliant Mary jumping in here. Well,
Hello, Mary.
Mary doing his laundry type stuff there.
Yeah.
Need to get done. I just want to say how cool it is to have a group of volunteers that we all jump in either before, after, or during, and give it our best. And you can tell that we're not some group of corporate moneymakers.
Yay, Mary!
Really caring and doing everything that we can. So it's less than perfect, and that's what makes us special, because we are constantly growing and evolving. Just wanted to say that. Someone's calling in.
Yeah, I think that's Jonathan. That's our guest. So if you can screen him, then I think we're good to go. He figured it out. Everything's good.
Yay.
All right. So anyways, back to the guilty man. So the if you listen to the words of the song, it talks about the guilty man, and then it talks about this character who in this case was me, and it was a story about how I was accused and locked up and you know, for healing people with a plant and growing a plant and helping people out. But you know, you get accused of a crime and your world changes. And you know, the thing of it is when you're locked up and you're supposedly innocent until proven guilty, it's not just the court that treats you like you're guilty, but a lot of times, a lot of your circle, your inner circle, your outer circle, you know, I was very shocked at how the movement, the so-called movement, assumed things that, you know, the accusations that had been flung, and it changes your world. I had friends for many years that turned their back and walked away, and I never talked to them again, to be honest. Friends with them for 10, 15, 20 years. And I get accused of crimes, ultimately vindicated, ultimately completely exonerated. Ultimately, the court walked away. The court said, never mind, we're just kidding. After 6 years of grinding me up in a hamburger meal grinder. And those people that I was so close to, people I let stay at my house, people I provided things for, people that I gave generously to, in many ways, they were teachers and medical professionals and people who couldn't be sullied by a stigma like me, who was a man accused. And there's such a big difference between being accused and being guilty. And again, if you listen to the opening song, at the end of it, they talk about the innocent man, who in the beginning of the song was the guilty man. And I watch so many ways and so many things that happen. And, you know, there's a lot of good happening out in the world right now. And I'm very pleased that, you know, we seem to have a new generation of activists, of people that are becoming aware enough to maybe reach out and have a voice, people that are willing to stand up and at least say something about some of the things that are wrong. And, you know, last week I was going to begin the show with an African chant, and I just got done reading the story of Nelson Mandela, The Long Road to Freedom. And he was such an amazing person, because he didn't see himself as being a leader in the sense of he wasn't out there trying to be the leader. He was trying to get the work done. He was working, doing everything he could all the time, from the time he was young and realized that there was injustice in the world till the time that he ultimately became president of South Africa, and then decided, he was going to run one term. All the work he did was so that he could create a place where a peaceful, where the power could be transferred peacefully, without a coup, without a major deal, and he accomplished that. Ben's been, a hellish experience, and I hopefully will never have to go to prison again. But these people willingly went. In fact, that was their whole plan. Let's get experience, let's get some exposure, and let's get locked up for this so that we can get these cases to go to court and get the awareness brought together. And power to the people is what the saying stood for. And the point is, the people have the power. The people have the freedom. We have the rights. We're born with them. And somehow, some way, we let them go. We give them up. Whether we do it knowingly or not knowingly, we've depowered ourselves to where we find ourselves being oppressed in so many ways. And we've created a society now that is so hypersensitive and so easy to exchange ideas through our media and the information highway, that a person can destroy another person or cause damage to them simply by making an accusation. And like I said, if you sit in the court system, if you're accused, they say you're presumed innocent, but they don't treat you that way. And so we have a man, a senator named Jonathan Windyboy, and he was accused of harassment. And this is at a time when society has decided that harassment is a thing that is worthy of being brought out, exposed, prosecuted. And unfortunately, there's been a frenzy that's been whipped up, and in probably most of the cases, rightly so. And that's what makes this so difficult, is because to anybody who's legitimately been harassed or taken advantage of or oppressed by somebody because of their power and because of their position and standing, the person that did that should be taken out. But if somebody is accused because of somebody being hypersensitive, or maybe worse, maybe there was an accusation because of a vendetta or trying to accomplish something, that's a crime in itself. And especially if simply the mere accusation causes a problem. So if you guys have been paying attention, the Human Solution over the last couple of years has expanded our mission. And initially, we were formed, primarily as an activist group, as an advocate group to champion the cause of victims of the war on drugs, especially cannabis defendants, prisoners, and victims of persecution. But as we've grown along, and there's so many intertwining elements, that we've taken on cases of veterans' rights, and there's been so many veterans that have been victimized by prohibition and so many other things. There's so many homeless veterans and so many mentally disabled vets that are just kind of forsaken. And then we've opened it up to disabled rights. There's so many people that one of the big disabilities I see out there are drug and alcohol abuse, people that are addicts, people that have come to a place that is horrible because of maybe some bad choices they made that were compounded by chemical problems with physiology, and they find themselves in a place they can't get out of. And there's all kinds of disabilities that, again, cannabis prohibition is intertwined with. And then most recently, as I've become connected with the Southern Cheyenne tribe and some of the work I'm doing with some of the folks in the Native American communities, we've opened up our mission to include Native American rights. And so much so that we've created a wing of the Human Solution that is specifically taken on Native American rights. And we have a man, Sergio Sandoval, who is taking care of this. Now, this call here is from, I'm sorry, Jonathan, hopefully you can hang on for a little bit. This is from Craig Cecil, who's serving a life sentence in federal prison. And he's calling from federal prison today, as he does every week, for a 15-minute call. He's locked up for cannabis. Craig, how are you doing today?
Hello, Joe. Well, hello from Terre Haute, Indiana.
Yeah, I apologize for last week. We had a glitch with the show, and I have a state senator that was coming on as a guest. He's actually on hold right now, and he's going to be joining the show after your call. So he's actually listening. He's a man who was accused of something that is caused him harm, and you know all about that, being accused of things that maybe you didn't do, or maybe weren't a thing that should have been a crime.
Well, unfortunately, our criminal prosecutions, especially when they prosecute under the conspiracy law, you can actually break the law without knowing you're breaking the law. You can actually be made part of a crime that you were careful not to be a part of it. Our criminal justice system definitely needs some rework.
Well, it's interesting. I was just talking about, as the show got opened up, about, when you go to court and they say that you're innocent until proven guilty, but, you've been to court. How did that work out? Did you feel like you were innocent, like you had a chance to really fight your way out of it?
Well, unfortunately, that expression is used in all the textbooks, but what they leave out of that is the prosecutor and the judge have typically worked together for years. So they're very accustomed with each other. They of course go to dinner and bar events and all that and the like together. And the same prosecutor has millions of dollars and tons of resources behind them when they walk into the courtroom. So not only does he have the resources to do, an incredible amount of things, he has the benefit of the doubt from the judge because the judge knows him. So basically, you walk into court, and if the prosecutors accused you, the judge already has 2 strikes against you. They will give you the opportunity to prove yourself innocent, but oftentimes it's impossible to prove that, the witnesses that the prosecutor puts up there. And in the case of a conspiracy, all the witness says is they walk in and the witness is usually a prisoner themselves. They'll walk in and say, I'm convicted of a crime, I committed this crime, and he knew about it or he helped me with it. That's enough to get you convicted. Just that, you have a connection to somebody in prison.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, we're talking about nowadays, especially, just the stigma of an accusation can be, a career-changing, a life-changing event. And, I don't know that there's an answer for it. A lot of times we pose a question that may or may not have an answer, but I think a lot of it is that we start looking at our community, that we start looking at ourselves, hopefully with a little bit of honesty and maybe get some perspective about what's important and what's not. We have still a very violent society. We have horrible actions that are taking place all over the world. And rather than put resources at stopping them, we're still locking people up. A guy in Pennsylvania, I just saw in the news this morning, 51 or 53-year-old man was in Pennsylvania, and some kind of a task force stumbled upon him out in the woods, and he had, I don't know, they said they had 10 plants kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Now, Pennsylvania, I could imagine it snowed out there, so it might not have been a reference to a very current thing. But either way, they're claiming that he took off and they were chasing after him, and they had a big tractor, a big bulldozer. And ultimately, the guy ended up getting squished underneath this bulldozer. And they're claiming he hid out underneath it and they didn't know he was there. But for whatever reason, the fact that they were chasing him over 10 plants, over any amount of plants, it could have been 100 plants, 1,000 plants. You're going to chase a guy down to the point where ultimately he loses his life. And I got to wonder, maybe there was something violent that was happening somewhere within 10 miles of that place that maybe resources could have been put towards.
Well, what really gets me upset about that whole situation is there was probably a number of officers chasing him, and they're going all that for some marijuana plants. But yet, in my hometown of Chicago, there was 700 murders, and they only really looked into like 200 and something of them. The other ones, they just do a cursory review, write a file, and put it away. Now, what are these? What is law enforcement? Are they to stop?
This call is from a federal prison.
Are they there to stop people from getting hurt, like people that are getting murdered, or are they there to, just find some violation of the law to lock somebody up, like growing their own plant to smoke? I mean, where is the victim in a marijuana offense? They even admitted at my sentencing that, of course, there's no victim. There was nobody that had anything forced upon them.
Yeah, I think if we were to prioritize ourselves, where we put our resources, one of the things that pisses me off a lot is, you get taxed to hell. In California, we have one of the highest taxing rates there are. In fact, with the new tax code, I don't even get to write off my state taxes for my federal taxes. So, we're getting raped from all sides. And now we got a tax hungry governor that just took office, and he's got a tax hungry legislation behind him. So they're all sitting there behind doors going, all right, we got him now. And you would think, okay, when you're in a society that's taxed heavily, that there would be no problems, right? Because they're funded. They got all the money they need for whatever they need. The roads should be perfect. There should be very little to no crime. There should be, rainbows every weekend and everything wonderful, right? And yet, if you look at it, if you look at the actual stats, the price of gas keeps going up. The roads are horrible. The crime rates have either stayed the same. They may have gone down a little bit, but they fluctuate. There certainly hasn't been any dramatic reduction of crime. And there's still all the same problems that there's been ever since I was a kid. And yet the tax rates just keep going up. And I just wonder if we were to dedicate some resources to the real problems. We have real poverty out there. We have real domestic violence problems. We have substance abuse problems. We have just sheer violence problems. What if we were to focus on those?
That's what I see. Just in my own life, I had an experience this week as a former cellmate of mine that left here about 2 years ago contacted me. And, to his credit, he's going to a marijuana expo. And he's wearing a shirt with my picture on it. I can't take that from him. But I got locked up in 2002 because my business repaired trucks in Chicago for a Florida company which hauled marijuana from Mexico to Florida and Georgia and that region. And I received a life sentence in 2002 for that. In 2012, I believe it was, he robbed 3 banks one in Minnesota, one in Illinois,
Wow.
and one in Wisconsin. So he robbed tellers by threatening them and all that, and taking the money and leaving the bank. He got a 4-year sentence. So he left here 2 years ago after serving his 4-year sentence. His supervised release is even over, and he's outgoing in a marijuana offense. But yet the victims of his crime, the tellers that were intimidated by him and all that, and the people that got their money stolen in the banks, there's, I'm sure they wonder if there's really justice in the system where he goes home. He comes in and goes home while I still sit here because, I helped somebody haul marijuana.
Well, and one of the reasons that we do this show is to educate people and enlighten people about some of the problems that are right in front of us. And I just heard another study, and they said that there's a 61 or 62% approval rating in America for legalizing, I put giant quotes around that, of cannabis. And the federal legislature is looking at it. They continue to look at it. There's all kinds of criminal justice reform bills out there. There's dozens of cannabis reform bills out there. And yet they don't ever make it out of committee. There isn't one of them that's even come close to a floor vote. And I think a lot of it is because people believe that we're already done, that there isn't the work left to do. And I get more and more frustrated because, we're out here still pounding away, trying to educate people and let people know. And people don't realize what's happening out there is when we legalize things in a very restrictive way, what happens is that those that have the licenses, those that are so-called legal, they end up being rats, and they end up trying to shut down those that are not. And all of a sudden, I ask people so many times, who gives you the right to grow broccoli on your property? Who gives you the right to grow wildflowers on your property? And nobody considers that they need a right to grow that. Well, who gives you the right to grow cannabis? Well, it should be the same thing, right? Who gives you the right to grow peyote? Who gives you the right to grow poppies? Who gives you the right to grow any plant? I don't care what plant it is. Where do we get that right? We get that right because we're human beings, and we figured out where to get the seeds, and we have a place to put it. We got some water. That's the right we have. When did the government decide? When did we allow the government to tell us what we can plant in the ground and what we can't? And when we did that, all of a sudden, we opened up the door for it to be okay for one person to do it, but not another person. If you have a piece of paper, if you have paid Caesar the way Caesar wants to be paid, if you've gone through the hoops, if you've done the things they say, then you have that right. Well, the other person who maybe doesn't have those means or doesn't know how or isn't even aware that there's such an issue, that person's now a criminal. And it's happening more and more, not less and less, as we pass these laws that allow some people to do some things.
Well, that's why I'd like to see something in the way of criminal justice reform in our legislatures that, okay, yes, the one that they passed in December called the First Step Act, it did make
This call is from a federal prison.
It did make a small difference for prisoners. They gain about 7 days extra per year of good time. There's some more money for schooling for prisoners in that. And I mean, there's some minor changes in it, but it really doesn't change, why are half of the federal prisoners in for drug offenses where there's no victim? And of that half, which is right now about 90,000 federal prisoners, about 20% of them, so that would make it, about 17,000 federal prisoners are in for marijuana crimes. And that's against the backdrop of, what is it now, 31 or 32 states that have some sort of legalized marijuana.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What are we doing? There's something that needs to be fixed.
That's the big question. What are we doing? So Well, Craig, I know we always run short on time, and I'm always kind of long-winded when it comes to this, so I want to kind of give you the last few minutes that you have.
Okay, well, that is my push to our lawmakers. I ask everybody, contact your lawmaker, give them an email, give them a letter, give them a peace of mind if you see they're in your neighborhood. But tell them that, we need criminal justice reform. They need to finally put an act before Congress that just says the federal government gets out of marijuana altogether. Leave it up to the states, leave it up to the local governments. But push your congressman, be it your senator, your representative, give marijuana a vote. And take a look at our criminal justice system. Why are we chasing around drug people and giving them life sentences when violent offenders, non-murder violent offenders, only face up to 20 years in prison? Get a hold of these people and tell them this needs to change if we want to change. You're the one that the government works for, supposedly.
Well, and there it goes. Craig drops off. All right. Well, so for anybody who doesn't know, that was Craig Cecil, currently serving a life sentence in federal prison on a conspiracy case where his company was a truck repair company that fixed trucks, and some of the trucks that he fixed were used in smuggling, and he put them back together after they were all torn apart. He got caught up in a conspiracy case, and because of our tough on crime laws, he's serving a life sentence in federal prison where there is no victim whatsoever. All right, so we're up to our scheduled guest. We got Jonathan Windy Boy here, and this is the third time is the charm. The first time he didn't have the information to call in. The second time he was ready to call, and we didn't have a show. And here we are. We've connected the dots, and so I'm just going to go ahead and bring you up here. Jonathan, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing pretty good so far.
Well, I apologize for the rocky start, but here we are. I have a little bit of information about you as far as your background. But I'd rather just give you a chance to introduce yourself, let people hear your words, and why don't you tell us a little bit about your political background, and maybe a little bit about the work that you've done, and then let's get into this issue of being accused.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, 20 years ago or so, 25 years ago, I've been doing a little bit of drug and alcohol prevention activities and education and conferences across the country, school districts in Navajo, and a lot of that. And when I tried to come home to do some local stuff, I hit a lot of roadblocks. And then there was one little fella, a grade schooler, saw my frustration. He asked me, what's wrong? And so I told him, well, it's kind of frustrating that they can't even get my local leaders to try to support what I'm trying to do for education purposes. And so he looked at me and said, well, why don't you run? So at that point, that's when I started, and it took a grade schooler to get me to that point of making that decision, and I got elected onto my tribal council from 1998 to 2010. And then in that meantime, in that early 2000, I served as the chairman of the Montana-Wyoming Tribal Leaders Council, which consists of the tribes in Montana and Wyoming. And they sent me to Helena for an issue, a human service issue, during the 2001 legislature at that time. So I came here, and my local representative that was representing in my district was on the committee I was presenting to, testifying to, and he voted against while I was there. And then when the door didn't even close, and they took the vote, and he voted against while I was there. And so when I was walking out, he followed me, and he said, "Hey, Jonathan, come here." He said, And so I stopped and heard him out, and he said, you don't understand how things work here. He said, I had to vote that way. And I told him, well, you could have. Yeah, you had the votes to kill what I'm here for. So he could have humored me and voted to support me.
Right.
So anyways, I told him, but I'll tell you one thing. I said, I may not understand this whole this system that you're in, but next year in 2002 November, I said, when the election's coming around, I'm going to take you out. So that's what I did. I've been in the Montana legislature since 2002, and after this, in the next 2020 election, I'll be in here for 18 years. And so I have a total of, after that, I'll have a total of 30 years of politics under my belt. And so anyways, throughout that whole course of time, I have become one of the most influential lawmakers in the legislature. And from 2002, I served 3 2-year terms, which equated to 6 years. And then because of the 8-year term limit, I had a chance to run for my Senate seat in 2008. So I took on the incumbent Democrat, and I took him out, and I term limited that one for the 8 years from 2008 to 2016. And then I had to either retire or sit out. So the way our rules are is if you sit out 8 years in 8 consecutive years in a chamber, then you can run for it again. So the 8 years of my Senate tenure qualified me to run back from my House seat. So I ran successful in 16 and again in 18. And so again, this is my 9th legislative session. I've been here, and I've been dealing with all kinds of issues here, and mostly in the human services, as well as language preservation, language immersion, suicide prevention. And from 2005, 7, 9, 11, 13, I have introduced bills that increase penalties for domestic violence, because I never hit a woman in my life, and there was also bills that made it harder for a harsh work environment and a harsh environment. And so, my record is pretty well in the support of trying to make things right. And then, so that's kind of a little background of my political history.
So, I always wonder, many times I considered running for office, but then, in California, things are pretty messed up in the sense of, the forces that are influencing legislators seem to be, pretty overpowering. And, there's a lot of frustration growing amongst citizens with their government. And, you're on the other side of it. What do you think? Can you see a disconnect between a lot of legislators? I mean, a lot of this is federal issues, but even on the state level, and in California especially, I think there's a gigantic disconnect between the state legislation and me. For sure, my state legislators haven't been helpful on any issues I've had. What do you think? In Montana, you don't have nearly as many people as we do here in California. But what's the political climate like? I mean, do you feel like politicians are influenced a lot by the big business? Do you feel like there's actually really a system that's working? I mean, what's your thoughts from the inside perspective?
Well, the whole dynamics is different from California and other places. Montana has barely reached the million mark as far as the census in 2010, and so our political climate is a little different, and there's a lot of things that occurred with the redistricting. And so the advantage of the redistricting portion in our state had gone more to the conservative side. And in the 9 sessions I've been here, the closest I've been in being in the majority party of the Democrats was 50-50, and the only reason why we're a majority is because we had a Democrat governor. And so the climate that we have here, as far as a conservative, sometimes it gets pretty harsh, and the name calling gets pretty harsh. And as a matter of fact, they even have one of the training camps up in the northwestern part of the state that goes into Sandpoint, Idaho, which is where they have the training of the KKK and all of those and all of that. So the climate is pretty heavy. As a matter of fact, giving an example that there was a native lady who had a backfire in her pickup going through the northwestern part of the state, and people in the area thought somebody was shooting at them, so they put her on a run. And so they take the privacy right, or not the privacy, but the private lands, all of that stuff, pretty serious up in Montana. So the climate it depends. And that was one of the things that, when I first got in here, I used to be told, geez, why do you want to go there? I said, there's nothing but a bunch of racist bigots and all of that stuff. But when I got here, it turned out that most of the people there in the legislature weren't really the racist bigots that they were labeled as. It's just that they were uneducated. So I got to visit with a lot of them, and what I found out was that it wasn't that they were racist or bigots, but it's just that they were uneducated. And so that was what part of my mission on my own personal is to educate them, let them know where I'm coming from, and let them know the obstacles and the hoops that we have gone through not only over the years, but over the centuries. So that's kind of the climate as far as the political atmosphere in this state.
And, you have a name, Jonathan Windy Boy. I have to ask, where did that come from?
Well, on my great grandpa's side, he come in from Canada, and he was up there. His name was Wandering Spirit, and he was a war chief for the Chief Big Bear up around Frog Lake area. And so when he was accused of murder and all of that stuff, he was put on a run. And eventually, in the late 1800s, he made it down towards Havre, Montana. And then at that time, when the government was rounding up all of the natives in the area and giving them the enrollment and all of that stuff, and then he changed his name to Big Wind, his spirit given name, guardian name. And then he had 33 kids, and my grandpa was the youngest of all 33, and his Indian name was Windy Boy.
Okay.
And so from then, when they had the enrollment rolls and all of that stuff, my grandpa just kept that as our last name.
Got it. So up in Montana, I mean, I'm familiar with some of the native folks up there. What kind of work are you doing specifically? Historically, as you know, the native people have had a rough treatment over the last 250 years, and you guys have recently gotten some opportunities with casinos and such, but it doesn't fix the problems that have kind of landed on you. And there's a lot of problems that we can make changes, and some that are more difficult. As a state legislator, you have opportunity to maybe support or promote programs that can help the native people. What have you been able to do on that front?
Well, in 2013, I got the state general fund to fund language preservation at $2 million, and I had a lot of pushback even from my own members from my own party. And so when I took it out of a fund, it raised hackles even in Indian country. Kind of, I guess you can say that it pitted Indian versus Indian. But at the end of the day, knowing that we had over a $10 billion budget, that $2 million is chump change, and we could get it out. We could get it out from someplace else, which eventually happened at the last week of that legislature, and they miraculously found everything laying around, so they funded them. And so anyways, and then until 2015, that program was so successful that when the governor took his road trip to Indian country, and that was one of the things that tribes wanted to make sure that's in place. So the governor put it in his budget at 1.5, and so it kept on dwindling down. In the last session, there was $1 million in there, and so there was shortage in funding. So being a one-time only from the general fund, that's when they knocked that in half. So that's what I've been trying to do, is to trying to make sure that's a permanent funding source for the preservation of languages. And just giving you an example that when we first started our preservation program on my reservation, there was 165 fluent speakers out of 7,000. And today we're at about 98, maybe, give or take a few. And even Blackfeet, I just found out last night visiting to one of my Blackfeet colleagues that you have 18,000 people and they have 30 fluent speakers left. So we're at a dilemma here as far as possibly witnessing the extinction of native languages in our state, and I'm sure that's probably the norm across the country. And so that's and 2015 with this language immersion bill that I got put in place, because the school districts, public schools have possession of our kiddos from 8 to 4 a.m., 8 to 4 p.m. every day. I wanted to put together the opportunity for these fluent speakers to come into the schools and have that opportunity to teach these young kids the language. And so that's part of that has been a part of what that was. And then at the same time, we just had a hearing today, and we're extending that deadline to 2023. And so that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to get at least one language immersion school on each reservation in Montana. So the efforts are still there, and I'm not giving up on that.
I wonder if there's a way to, they have these programs for learning different languages where they have, an online course, or they have recorded, they have these whole programs like, it's a program called Babbel that you can learn different languages. I wonder if there's a way to integrate that kind of technology, with some of these folks, and maybe even create a program that could be, distributed or made available to people.
Actually, there is, and that's one of the things, because every legislative session we have all 7 reservations in the Little Shell, which is a state-recognized tribe. They come in and they have the rotunda for the day, and so when they came in, then that's one of the things that about at least 4 of the tribes are current. They do have online apps such as that.
Oh, good.
So there is those interactive studies in place.
So there's at least hope, for people, even if these people that are fluent aren't able to reach everybody that might want to learn. There's still a way to learn.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And that's the thing. And I'll give you a little example of how I set up this language immersion in Montana, because it was specific to Montana, and using my experience as a tribal leader got me a good understanding of how the social services systems work on a local level. So because we have high unemployment rate on the reservations, there's a requirement for public assistance to have a requirement of 20 hours of work or looking for work. And so what I left the opportunity for tribes or the local policymakers to pursue that and expand the policy to allow those parents or grandparents or whoever raising the kids, to allow them that 20 hours to be taking a course at tribal colleges, because each reservation in Montana has a tribal college on them, and that would it's a win-win situation for everybody, because right now in Rocky Boy, like I said, we have 7,000 members, there's 4,000 residents, and that tells me there's 3,000 people out there wherever they may be for work, school, or whatever, that they'll have and once they find out they have the opportunity to take evening courses, then they can dial in and take the language classes at the same time. And then while the parents are at home and they're registered for these evening courses, and then the kids, because the kids, once they start learning the language at school, chances are pretty good that they're not going to have anybody to converse with once they get home. And so by having this, it's also a family strengthening tool to go together to learn the language and start speaking themselves at home. So it's kind of like I said, it's a outside the box approach, and it hasn't really caught on yet, not the way I wanted it to.
Well, as we know, staying with something can bring about results. So it sounds to me, from what I've heard and what I've, we've done a little bit of research about you, that you're a pretty fine, upstanding guy who's done a lot of good for the community. But that doesn't necessarily matter sometimes. It seems like you've run into a little bump in the road. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's happening? And before you get started, I want to preface that, the Human Solution International is a 501c3 civil rights organization. And we believe very strongly that we all, have inalienable rights and basic human rights and civil liberties that are equal for everybody. And, we focus on a number of causes, including recently we've added Native American causes into our mission. And Sergio Sandoval brought you to our attention, and Sierra as well, who we've been working with, and asked if we could help out with this injustice that was happening. And so we were able to put up a press release and get it distributed out there, and we actually got some results. We had apparently one of the reporters that was involved in putting this story out reached out to us and was looking to get some clarification, and I'm not sure
90 seconds.
what all has come of it, but why don't you tell us a little bit about this little fiasco that's gone on?
Okay, well, a couple of years ago, I was when I was serving on a committee, and just giving a little bit about farther back, about around 2011, that's when I become a bachelor, a single person that were
60 seconds.
and the missus. So we went our separate ways, and so anyways, when I reached out to an individual, and I'm not going to mention any names or whatever because of privacy issues. So anyways, just like any normal citizen, we're all human. We all have our needs. We all have our wants and everything. And one of the things that we try to do is to try to be cordial and try to be to become involved, whether it be through friendship or through intimate relationships or whatever. And so anyway, when I started to converse with this one lady, she had written this complaint and turned it into my leadership. And what happened at that point in time is usually when, like the previous caller was talking about, that in my case there was a process that was skipped, and that's the due process part of it. And any human resource organization that they have within any employee setting is that the human resource person gets a complaint, and then they give the opportunity for both the accused and the accuser to come before them, and they'll review the complaint, and then if it deserves further investigation, then both parties will be known, and then they'll do the investigation. That part there was skipped, and what happened was the leadership had received the complaint, and then the leadership then turned around and reviewed it, and then they sent it directly to the investigator. And so through this whole process, my side of the story has never been told. I was never given the opportunity to tell my side of the story, which is why I feel that's why the report came out and the newspaper article came out with only a one-sided version of what the real story was. And if I was to be brought up, and according to the rules here, that once the leadership has received a complaint, then the rules here state that it's going to be directed to the rules committee. And it wasn't during the session. It was off and wasn't even had anything to do with work related. But they still went ahead and for me, the way I'm taking this is that once they turn this over to that investigator, the investigator contacted me, and I didn't have nothing to hide. I just wanted to go in and tell the truth and let it be what it was. And so, anyways, I went into the investigator, and the lines of questioning to me I felt was pretty narrow and focused, like there was a mission of some sort. And so, anyways, after that, I went my merry way. But the part of the report that wasn't told was when I asked this person for coffee or dinner, she accepted, and that's no. And I doubt if that's in the report. But if I was given that opportunity to tell my side in the early stages, they would have taken a look at that, and they probably would have thrown it out. Because if there was as offensive as it came out to be or made a sound in the papers, then all she had to do was call me up and say, "Hey, look, I don't appreciate your comments or whatever." And then I would have said, "Oh, fine, don't have to worry. They'll never hear from me again."
Mm-hmm.
And I should have been done with that. But yet, at the same time, when the report came back from that investigator, they took it upon themselves to make that determination that this was harassment. And so at that point in time, that was the leadership had told me the situation, and so and they notified me that that this was documented and all of that. And even as of last week, one of the leadership on the Senate side had mentioned to me that he thought this was a done deal. That we looked at it, we heard it, we sent an apology, we put it on the shelf. That's where I thought it was going to stay. And then about a month ago or so, that's when another member of the leadership team had kind of blurted this out, because there was what was on the table was the new proposed harassment, because the last rule that we're operating on was 2.5 pages in the joint rules, and this new proposed rules was 10 pages, and this 10-page one should have been in place. And to me, it was kind of like a covering some tracks. It seems like some wasn't right. It still doesn't seem right. But yet at the same time, I got persecuted, and within a short period of time, then the leadership had mentioned after the FOIA request from the AP writers had requested from legislative services. They want this report, they want the notes, they want everything to do with that. And so when the legislative services attorney gave them the redacted report, then what should have happened is, rather than giving the AP the redacted report, looking at the cover letter here, he should have taken it straight to the court and told the AP, if you want this thing, you're going to have to go petition to the court and the judge to let him know. Because at that point, when the AP article came out on February 22nd, which had my name on there, and the leadership had outed me and mentioned my name, but yet on the day before, on February 21st, I signed a no waiver of my privacy rights. And so that document itself, by not waiving my constitutional rights, then they turned out the next day, and I was the only one that was outed as far as in that article. And everybody's saying that everybody, you know, as public opinion, has persecuted me and has already judged me and everything. But at the same time, there were laws, there were federal laws that were broken. And that's the issue that I have. I mean, I've already stated my piece, at least a part of my story, but I'm reserving the point in case I do decide to file charges as far as a civil case. So that's still an option. But to this date, I have not waived my constitutional privacy rights. So if there's any article since then, it's going to be up to the courts and the judge and whomever to see who is culpable, because there's a lot of numbers of newspaper outlets that had taken part of the AP and put their own little twist on it. So in the end run, that's the way I'm labeled, as a harasser.
Yeah, it seems that news agencies oftentimes will turn things to suit their needs, and a negative story, seems to get legs. I always caution people when they have opportunities to be interviewed by news people to be careful what they say, because many times they'll take 5 words out of a 20-minute interview and spin it a certain way that isn't necessarily what was intended. And journalism's supposed to be pure. It's supposed to be reporting, what happens so that we can trust them, but it doesn't work out that way a lot of times. Well, I hope that the press release that we issued, at least it put a counterpoint, and it brought up that there was questions, and I know that it did get the attention of some of the agencies, because they did actually reach out for some clarification. And I haven't talked to Sergio in a couple of days, but I'm going to find out if there's been any follow-up, because if there's any way that we're able to. They were asking about us and our legitimacy, and we've been federally recognized for almost 5 years now as a civil rights organization. So we've been able to at least explain who we were and why we were taking this position. So I hope that we're able to do some good. And just know that, and unless we had our people do their own independent research, and nobody found anything substantial that was negative. So I'm a man who believes somebody unless I'm shown otherwise. So it's not right when equality doesn't happen and only a part of the story is allowed to be told in a way that hurts somebody. That's not right.
And we know how that feels. Jonathan Wendy Boy, this is Liz Grumbine. And we know how that feels, because my husband, as we were fighting our own battle with the government, the prosecutors and other witnesses accused him of things that weren't true. And my man is an honest man. I know how he is, and went through this battle with him. And these lies that they said were not true. So we know exactly what you're going through.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that in my district right now, 60% of my district is native, and it includes 2 reservations. The Rocky Boy Reservation, where I live and where I'm enrolled at, that's where my dad is, and the other reservation is where my mother is. So I think people have underestimated the support that I have within my own district, and if they think that this is going to take me down, I think they're going to have something else to see when I get reelected next year.
Well, I just know that you do have our support, and I'll be talking to you and Sergio, and if there's anything else that we can do to be helpful, just know that I have this show every Wednesday, and if there's something that comes up that you think might be helpful to reach out to our audience, I'll make that available to you. And, just know that, we're here to help if we can.
Yeah, I appreciate that. My one late uncle told me one time, and I had a good visit with him. He said, as long as you know, and as long as the big man upstairs knows what the truth is, that's all that matters.
Yes,
I know what the truth is, and my truth is going to set me free.
There you go. And that's what I always say. When you shine the light on, what happens? The rats and the cockroaches scurry away, and the rock stars come out and stand up. And that's, let the truth be the light. That's what I have to say.
Oh, and I also like Jonathan Windy Boy, and I would like to also extend an invitation if you're available on April the 13th. I'm having a ceremony here with Sierra and Sergio, so I would be honored if you would come. So.
Well, at some point in time, I will. But my legislative session is a 90-day session, and my last day is on May 1st.
Okay.
And we go 6 days a week, so it's kind of.
But no worries, we support you.
Well, Jonathan, I have a few people that are asking about how to reach out to you. Do you have a social media presence? Are you on Facebook or anything, or how can somebody reach you?
Well, Facebook is the last thing I ever wanted to be on. I'm not too social media friendly. I'm pretty kind of technologically challenged, and all I do is text and email and phone calls. But my phone number is 406-945-1805, and my email address is RDP as in Robert Edward Paul. The number's 32, and my initials JWB @gmail.com.
Excellent. All right, Jonathan. Well, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you taking some time out to talk to our audience. And know that I'll make this available to you if you've got anything you want to bring up. And if you get a phone call or an email from a Laura or somebody else, know that they're coming from some good folks. They're part of our team. And, I believe that a lot of times people come up with good ideas or even just to share support. You can count on that from us.
Yeah, appreciate that.
You bet. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Jonathan Windy Boy, folks. All right. We got Pete Yapel up from New York next, and we're going to be at the end of the show. This is now an hour show, and we're an hour and 15 minutes into it. Pete Yapel, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Doing good, Joe. Yourself?
I'm doing amazing.
I know. You guys always are. Glad to hear Liz on the radio tonight.
Yikes.
Helen was
I don't do that often,
right
so don't get used to that.
Yeah.
But we're plugging along. We've been, just keeping busy. We were supposed to have a council meeting at City Council in Fort Jervis last night. It got postponed for this coming Monday evening. But we're looking forward to doing that and getting involved there, getting a human solution. Solidarity, obviously, our chapter active and making a difference in the community. It needs it bad. So we're going to present an outreach program to them, a hand-up program that we've been building. We've been lucky. We've got some doctors that we've met lately that are more than happy to sit on this board, free. This is a free commitment. This is a volunteer venture that we're trying to put on, just so that obviously the community can feel comfortable. They don't feel that people are there to benefit. And it's just there to help them. And the more the community can be involved in it, the better. And like I always say, when you finally have a purpose or you have something you feel like you're doing where you're actually able to contribute again, it gives you that reason to keep going and keep going forward. And hopefully we can stir up some people that'll understand that this plant is, just like you were saying before, just a plant. why can't I grow it like everything else? It's really become silly, honestly.
Well, it's exciting. You guys are looking at doing this outreach program, and we talked about the neck of the woods that you're in is a huge number of heavy drug users, and we've determined or assessed that people that have addictions, whether it's heroin or opiates or meth or alcohol or whatever the addiction is, that is a harmful situation. It's a disability. And as much as, I'm a person that doesn't believe in victims very much, and I believe that choices are ultimately the foundation of this, but there's so many factors involved and a lot of mental health and PTSD, and you combine all these things together, abuse, and all of these things. Sometimes the humanity just can't stand up to it, and succumb to some of these substances. And so to be able to reach out as part of a civil rights organization that is standing up for these people, and offering an arm up and some opportunity. I'm very excited to see this take its first steps, and most importantly, or maybe not most importantly, but certainly importantly, that you have the support of the community, and you've got physicians, and in fact, even the mayor that is shown support for this. So I'm really excited to see this start to take place, and I'm just really, really proud of the organization. We've got a number of chapters and individuals that are really starting to step forward and reach out into some of our new territory of our expanded mission, and we're helping more and more people in more and more ways.
Absolutely, we got a great team, and we honestly do, and it's all about putting forth the effort, guys. Like Joe said, we're lucky. The mayor is on board with it. The police department's sick of it. Unfortunately, this little city sits in the corner of 3 states that border. The city itself borders Matamoros, Pennsylvania, and Sussex, Jersey, and they're all not very rich areas either. So this just becomes a big hub for all of the heroin that's coming through the area to pass through. I mean, they've had fire department chiefs involved in this heroin ring. They're poisoning people and then sending their people out to go save them with Narcan. I mean, it's really getting out of hand, and when things get too far out of hand, Helen and I just can't sit by. We just can't.
Well, I appreciate that, and I hope that as time goes by and as our organization gets stronger, more robust, that more and more people can't sit by and watch injustices just happen and unfold, and watch social problems happen in front of you without reaching out to do something. Humanity, the human solution, it's a heavy term. It's something that is deep and real, and it's who we are. And if we're not part of a solution, then what are we? And it's an important question to ask, and I think there's so many ways that we can be part of the solution, and reaching out to help a human in need is certainly part of it. So I'm excited, and I'm curious to see how this plays out, and hopefully we're going to end up creating a template that can be spread easily all over the place. And so we're watching, and we're standing in support.
Thanks, man. I know you guys always do. You always got our back. But so we're going to go live with it. Helen and I will obviously post it. We'll put it up on the Human Solution page as well. But we will be live at 7 o'clock next Monday night at this. The one thing I will say, and what has us so excited is, I don't know about a lot of cities, and I've been to a lot of town board meetings, and some are, the community is involved, and some just, the businesses and, people of power and predominance. But Port Jervis is tired of what's going on. So it kind of is working out at the right time. We've been walking the streets a little bit, talking to people, talking to business owners, documenting this stuff so that,
mark everywhere. I mean, you can't take a small print like this and throw it and say Oakland. You know what I mean? It doesn't work like that. But neighborhoods within Oakland, or say the Bronx or Brooklyn here on our coast, can adapt this and it not be like a turf war thing, but let's our community take care of our community. And then you'll see hands reach across. You know, and then once we all are reaching our hands across, we can all hold hands, and maybe we can get something finally done.
Well, I love it. And Pete, if somebody wants to help out in your neck of the woods up in the New York part of this country, how do they get a hold of you?
It's very simple. 845-522-3162. That's my phone number. Helen's phone number is 352-299-1473. You can always visit Solidarity Over Separation on Facebook, or reach out to our webpage, CannaWeTalk42small-o.com.
Excellent. Well, Pete, it's always a pleasure. You and Helen are doing an amazing job, and I look forward to watching Solidarity Over Separation reach out and touch some folks.
Amen, brother.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Peace, guys. Everybody have a great night, and we'll talk to you all next week.
Excellent. All right, folks. Well, I don't know if you remember, but we've turned this 2-hour show into a 1-hour show, and it seems that we've already gone 20 minutes over that 1 hour. But I do have one more thing I want to bring up. It looks like I may be going to Kansas in the next month or so, and our Kansas chapter has been just tearing it up, and they have submitted a bill on their own, not as a human solution specific effort, but the bill happens to be called a human solution for Kansas. And I'm just so proud of that, because again, it's what this is. And they have a bill that's sort of modeled off of Oklahoma's legislation that is the closest thing to something good that I've seen. And it gives most of the power to the people. And yes, it does mean that my wife will get another puppy. So anybody wants one of the old ones, I'm glad to help you out here. We have some slightly used,
a rescue,
slightly used Chihuahuas that I could give away, so that she can rescue yet another one. But anyways,
he said he would never go back to Kansas again. I go, okay,
I did say that.
If you do go back to Kansas, I get a rescue dog.
Yes.
And he goes, okay. Right, Willow? Yeah.
So anyways, they're doing such good work out there, and I'm willing to reach out and grow the herd yet one more animal. And this is little Willow, one of the many. And they're organizing an opportunity to sit down with legislators and to give some real education. There was a hearing a week ago or so, and Sarah and Mike called me up and explained how horrible it was. And there were people that had attended this hearing that just didn't know what they were talking about. And they're talking to the community, and they're talking to lawmakers, and they're doing it poorly. And you know, the only thing that's worse than no information is bad information. And if we are going to do any good, if we're going to change the world, if we're going to end prohibition and open up all the liberty that could come from that, we got to have our facts straight. We got to be able to communicate with people in a way that they might pay attention and listen. We got to make ourselves available with knowledge and experience. And these people can't say the words. They don't know how to say cannabidiol. They don't know how to say cannabinoids. They don't know how to say endocannabinoid system. They don't know not only what these things are, but they don't know how to say them. And we need to be able to bridge that gap. The truth is our salvation. The truth is the thing that's going to end prohibition. The truth, if people could understand the truth in a way that actually registered, actually touched them a little bit, we wouldn't have the problems that we have. It would all of a sudden become obvious that these big companies that are benefiting so much from us being locked up and not able to have access to this are the ones that are the only ones that are benefiting from this. And the truth about nobody ever dying from this plant, and so many hundreds of thousands, probably millions of people that have benefited from this plant. That's a truth that just can't be kept down for too long. But unfortunately, the gap between where we are today and where we need to be is gigantic. And I do have a copy of the bill, and I am studying it. And trust me, when I come out there, I'm going to be an expert on that bill. But that's what we need, is we need people that are capable, people that are able to talk about this plant, this medicine, and its relative safety and the benefits that can come of it. And also common sense. You know, if we can get the idea of common sense, relative safety, harm reduction, these terms that have application all across society, if we can bring that into the picture, maybe, just maybe, we can get some influential people to understand and maybe be willing to learn. And if we can teach even a few of them these truths, maybe we can get them to care like we do. And maybe if we can get them to care like we do, maybe we can get them to help and make these changes. And I believe that that's something that we can do. And I'm willing to go to Kansas to help it out. So that's what we have waiting in the wings right now, brewing in the pot. And so on that note, next week we're going to do this again. I don't have any guests. Yes, I am coming to Kansas. I don't have any guests scheduled for next week. So if you or you know somebody that wants to come on, get a hold of me. We're going to have a show one way or the other. There's always lots to talk about, but I like it when we have a plan. I like it when we have a guest. I like it when we have yes, I am getting a puppy too.
Rescue.
6 is just not enough, you know. We just got to have more, plenty more. But anyways, if you want to get involved, get onto the website, thsintl.org. Go to the contact us page and let me know about it. As you can see, we've opened up the show to a little bit more of a diverse conversation, and we're going to be talking more and more about the medicine, more and more about why this plant is important to be free. And on that note, I'll see you all next week. Let's see what Willie Nelson has to say about all of this.
I am Willie Nelson, and the Willie Nelson Teapot Party and I endorse the human solution, supporting cannabis prisoners because no one should go to jail for a plant. You were always on my mind. You were always on my
mind. We had a lot of viewers.
Thank you for using
And then they all dropped off.
Radio. Goodbye.
And then we ended with them all back on again. At one point we were at 11.